All right, all you multifamily maniacs, welcome to the Deal Lab. I'm Dr. Heath Jones.
And I'm Hutch, the marine investor.
Oh man, today we're going to be talking about something that you probably hear thrown around a lot, and you may not know exactly what it means, or you may have an idea of what it means, but we're going to really drill down on this. So today we're going to talk about or ask the question, what does infinity banking mean, and how can it help you buy real estate? Our guest today is a former police officer turned wealth advisor who's been investing in real estate since 2011. He started with wholesaling, then purchased his first rental property in 2012 using creative financing and the BRRRR method. Through the repeated application of this strategy, he accumulated several multiple single-family rentals in his home market of Kansas City, and he later sold all those properties and transitioned full-time into multifamily in 2019. Through apartment syndication, he now owns 52 units with his partners and plans to continue building wealth through multifamily real estate. In addition to real estate investing, he still has a full-time job in financial services. His specialty is in helping real estate investors insulate themselves from rising tax rates, market volatility, and lawsuits while maximizing the use of every dollar. You can find out more about our guest and how you can work with him at preveliws.com. We'd like to welcome Mr. Adam Doran. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well, Heath. Thank you so much for that great intro and for the invitation on the show today. Both you guys, thank you.
Absolutely. We're glad you're here because this is something that I personally have found very fascinating, and I haven't really ever talked to an expert about it. I've just read about it, watched videos, and so it's going to be good to really drill down on some of these topics, I think. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I tell you, Adam, really appreciate you joining us today, man. As a poor boy growing up in Jamaica, right, the things that we talk about in our last conversation and the way we can leverage certain assets that are available, it's a paradigm shift for me. And I'm really looking forward to dive into this because, look, we don't know what we don't know. And when we become enlightened, it's important that we use that information to create a good foundation for our family. And also, it's really important that we share that information with others because, look, the government is not going to create an awesome future for us. It's our individual responsibility. And, awareness is where it starts. So, Adam, really appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about it too. Thanks, Hutch.
All right. So, Adam, do you have a favorite real estate quote or mantra that drives you?
Yeah, I do. And it's simple, and a lot of people have heard it before, but it's really true. And that is, you make your money on the buy. I absolutely agree with that through experience.
I hear
totally
that.
agree with that.
That's right.
Yeah. If the number doesn't work out, you walk away. Right. You can make millions of dollars, but you can also lose a lot of money if you have not bought the assets correctly. Right. So, Adam, Heath dove deep into some of your accomplishments, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your current focus?
Sure. I spent 15 years being a police officer. Was living check to check, as most of America does. In 2011, I just got tired of that scenario. Also, my priorities had shifted because I had a family, kids, wanted to be able to have more time for my family, wanted to someday be able to be in a better place financially. And so when I figured out that my job in police work wasn't going to do that, I started, educating myself on how to build wealth, and ultimately landed on I need to have a business and I need to own real estate. And so that's how I got into real estate back in 2011. I actually did try a couple different business models before I settled on full-time, building my own financial practice. But yeah, I actually learned the strategy we're going to spend some time talking about today, learned about that back in 2011 or 2012 when I was educating myself, having no idea that I would get into the financial services industry and be a specialist in this particular strategy. But that's when I learned about it. And then 2018, I was able to leave my full-time police job and take the leap basically to start my own business. I had already been investing in single-family real estate, as Heath had mentioned in my bio, and continued doing that up until last year. And then last year I had the opportunity to jump in on a multifamily deal here in my home market of Kansas City. And so I love what real estate can do for you. I love how it changed the course of my family's life, and also in combination with the strategy we'll discuss today. And I'm really excited about multifamily real estate. I'm excited to do more deals. Now that I'm a limited partner on one, I'm excited to do more.
You got the bug. You got bit.
Yeah.
Well, kudos you, man, for taking the leap, and we do thank you for your service as a police officer. But at some point, you decided to take the leap to build wealth for your family, and I think that's just commendable as well. So, all right, so let's get down to brass tacks here. All right, so let's. I always like to start the audience off with a base understanding of some complex concept that we're going to be talking about, and so if we hear the term infinite banking, what exactly does that refer to, and what is sort of the steps you take to get it set up?
Sure. So Heath, you hit the nail on the head when you said term, because it is one term of several. I've heard lots of terms thrown around, but infinite banking could also be, I've heard the term cash flow banking. I've heard the term cash flow insurance, bank on yourself, bank with yourself, private family financing. All of those refer to the same financial strategy, which is you are leveraging whole life insurance, which is a stable asset that pays a dividend and can be structured to accumulate tax-advantaged cash. You're using that essentially as your own private bank, or a capital platform, really is what it is, to leverage into your real estate investing, or if there's anything else that you're investing in for greater return on your dollars. You're simply warehousing that capital or that money within an insurance policy. And the reason somebody might want to do that, or at least look at doing that, is because life insurance gets some pretty unique advantages under the tax code. And wealthy families and affluent families have known this for years and done this for years. There's lots of examples I give when I talk to real estate groups, one of which being Walt Disney, Ray Kroc, the gal who started Pampered Chef, Jim Harbaugh, even Joe Biden, actually a timely example of somebody who uses life insurance as an asset class. So that's what we're talking about when the term infinite banking gets thrown out there, is we're using life insurance in a very non-traditional way, not so much as life insurance, but as an asset class unto itself that has some liquidity features and some tax advantages that other assets just can't offer.
Excellent. Yeah, because go ahead, Hutch.
No, it's a pretty cool setup. So we hear about the dividend paying whole life, right? Some of the things you mentioned, and also warehousing your cash. Can you dive a little bit more into help our listeners understand more about warehousing cash?
Sure. Well, as a real estate investor, if you stay in real estate and you are successful in your investing, you eventually have a really good problem. And the good problem that you have is, what do I do with the extra cash that I'm accumulating? Where should I store it when I'm in between opportunities? Because inevitably there will come a time where you'll realize either a lump sum, or you'll have built up a lump sum from your cash flow, and you're waiting for the next opportunity. You're being selective about the next opportunity. So where do you put the money? And I think the traditional answer, or where most people would put the money, is probably something like either a business checking or savings account. It might be a money market account. It might be a standard brokerage account where you're trying to trade those dollars and keep the money growing ahead of inflation while you're waiting for the next opportunity. And the reason you would use any of those accounts I just listed is primarily because they're liquid. And you want to have liquidity, and you want to have the opportunity to deploy your cash and have it ready to go whenever that next deal comes along. Nice. And so when I say warehousing cash or warehousing capital, I'm just saying, where do we store the money while we're waiting to deploy it on the next opportunity?
From what we've learned through our quest to become financial literate, an asset and a liability are two different things, where a liability is something you pay for each month. So for this insurance policy, I think a lot of people think of this as just a monthly payment that you make, or a quarterly payment to this thing that you yourself will never realize, because you're setting it up for when you eventually leave the world and you're leaving the policy to your beneficiaries. So in terms of sort of changing your thinking about, well, I'm paying into this each month. How is that, helpful for me? And do I have to have a huge lump sum of money to put into the policy before I can pull money out?
Yeah, really, really good question. And that's the right question, Heath. And I think the first part of it was on the mark when you said people traditionally view life insurance as an expense. It's an expense in the budget, and there's a death benefit attached to it that, one day, someday, I won't be around for it, but it's for my family. And while that's true about life insurance in the traditional sense, that's usually when we're referring to term life insurance, which we buy it for a fixed dollar amount every month, and then it expires someday when we, don't need it anymore. With whole life insurance, which is a permanent life insurance contract, which means it's guaranteed for your whole life. That's why they call it whole life. It's a little bit different of a paradigm because now, traditionally speaking, if you would walk into any given life insurance shop and say, I want $1 million death benefit and I want whole life insurance because I want it to be permanent. First of all, that's going to be extraordinarily expensive. And second, the agent is probably going to optimize that policy to the death benefit. In other words, to get $1 million of death benefit, what's the lowest dollar amount we can quote on that? And that's where life insurance is an expense. We're flipping that model on its head when we're trying to build an asset because we're not so interested in the death benefit. It will be there because we're going to have a life insurance policy, but we're interested in buying the least amount of death benefit and putting the most amount of extra dollars in. So it's a little bit different model. Instead of buying the most death benefit for the least dollars, I'm trying to buy the least death benefit with the most dollars because I'm simply interested in creating a cash account and putting the life insurance wrapper around it so I can take advantage of the tax breaks that come with it and all the other advantages. So it's, like you said, it's a paradigm shift where I'm viewing this as an asset that I build. And so now to answer to your point about, well, I'm funding this thing or I'm building this thing. Yes, you absolutely are. You fund your savings account, you fund your retirement accounts, you fund your real estate investments. So just like any other asset class that you would have ownership in, there's going to be a period of you're going to have to fund this thing to build it up. One thing we make a point of to do with the clients I work with at Prevail, at the firm I work with, is if there are existing assets that are treated maybe not as favorably through the tax code, such as tax deferred assets or taxable assets, and we can transition those over a period of time into a policy, well, then it's not something where you have to realize an out-of-pocket expense, right? We're simply transferring the asset from one tax classification to another. So that's one way to not feel like you're having to come out of pocket. Another way would be maybe with somebody's existing contributions that they are putting towards their financial future, instead of allocating them all in one direction towards one given asset, we might allocate some towards this strategy. So there's ways to create the asset without you having to come out of pocket. That's kind of the short version. But absolutely correct what you said about a paradigm shift where I think traditionally people, when they hear life insurance, they think expense. And the only thing I would say is we have to call it life insurance because that's what it is. But in reality, I'm just looking for a capital strategy. I'm looking for a place to warehouse capital. And what is my best option? And we can look at what all the different options are.
Yeah. So as a real estate investor, when we talk about capital available between transaction, right, we're talking about a lump sum. Does this life insurance allow you to put a big lump sum in that policy, or are there restrictions on that policy?
Like is there a cap on how much you could put in per year or say something like that?
Sure. So there are some restrictions. And at the same time, you sometimes can put in a large lump sum. The restrictions around life insurance are pretty much delineated by the IRS, at least if you want to get the tax benefits out of it, which is the reason most people do this. And so I wish I had a picture to share with you guys, but I know you have listeners here, so I'll do my best to explain it. Because it is truly a life insurance policy at its base, the IRS requires that there is a minimum death benefit for any given amount of dollars you're going to put in. So if, let's say, a 40-year-old female real estate investor is going to allocate $5,000 a month into this account, Well, then the IRS is going to say, okay, well, for your given age and health rating, that's fine. You can put $5,000 into a life insurance policy, but you're going to need to buy at least this much death benefit to maintain a corridor between the cash value you accumulate and the death benefit that you have, so that it's legitimately justified as a life insurance policy. So that's where the limitations can come in. As far as how much you can put in, the answer is no, you're not really limited. Unlike a Roth where you would only be able to put in $6,000 a year, I have clients that have done, in excess of $100,000 a year. On the other hand, on the smaller side of the scale, we have clients that are doing $2,400 a year. That's $200 a month. So there's a wide range of how much could you fund this with. The other thing I would say about the limitations, going back to the question about, can I put a lump sum into one of these? You can, but the IRS, again, is going to require that you phase money in over a period of time, and the shortest you're going to be able to make that period of time is going to be somewhere between 7 to 10 years. So the shortest time frames of building these for people, you're usually looking at a 7 to 10 year period minimum that you're phasing money into this. So if we would dump in, let's say, a lump sum of $50,000 in the first year, we're going to need to have some more money to be able to put into that over the next 7 to 10 years. So we always look on a case-by-case basis with whoever we're talking to about strategy. We always look at what does it make sense to allocate to this asset today, and then how do we want to spread that in over the next 7 to 10 years or beyond. For example, me personally, I have one I'm funding through age 65. And the reason I'm doing that is I anticipate continuing to have income through age 65, if not longer. So I want to have a tax-free option in addition to my Roth.
You could technically buy more than one whole life insurance policy, right? And so as opposed to maybe phasing something in over 7 years, would you be able to take a lump sum and distribute it across policies sort of laterally?
Absolutely. Yep. And it's interesting you mentioned that. Joe Biden, I use him in a lot of my presentations right now because it's so timely. His personal financial disclosure from 2011, which I always show when I talk to real estate groups, it shows he has 6 of these. So he has 6 whole life insurance policies, and he lists them on his financial disclosure under assets and income.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
And so getting back to, say, someone who's putting in $200 a year or a month for $2,400 a year, when it comes time for them to use that as sort of liquid capital, how are they only allowed to take out $2,400 for the year? Or I feel like there's at least a 2-year buy-in period before you're able to take any capital out. Is that something I've heard that's correct?
Well, it is true that in the beginning years of the policy's life, you won't have 100% liquidity. So let's just say you put in $2,400 this year. It's hard to narrow it down to specific numbers, but I'm going to say you're going to have access to anywhere between 0% of that and 70% of that, depending on how you built that policy. And there's a reason for that that's kind of in the weeds, but I'll try to high level it here and just say you can structure these. There's a lot of flexibility in how you would structure a policy for yourself. And depending on if your primary goal is to have early cash value so that you can access cash right away, or if your highest priority is as much tax-free retirement income as you can get, depending on the sliding scale of those priorities, that's going to determine how you structure it. If you structure a policy to optimize it for as much tax-free retirement income as you can, then you're actually going to buy more death benefit up front, which means you're going to have less cash value up front. Because having the more death benefit up front gives you more room to grow that policy over the years and essentially accumulate more long-term. If you want to optimize it to have as much cash value up front where you would have like 70% of your cash available in year one, you can do that. You're just buying a lot less death benefit, which gives you a lot less bandwidth over the long term, so that by the time you get to 65, the account's going to be a lot smaller than it would have been if you'd have bought more. So there's kind of a balancing act that's done there. And so I always, again, when I'm working with clients and helping people with this strategy, we're always kind of looking at, okay, here's what this does if your priority is income. Here's what this does if your priority is early cash. And so you can structure the asset a number of different ways. But to directly answer your question now, bring it all back around, Heath, from month 1, you can actually have cash available from month 1. It's not going to be 100% of what you've put in, because there's a cost of insurance in there, and you're covering that cost of insurance in the early years of the policy's life. Once you get past about year 10, at that point, the thing continues to grow and to snowball to where, like for me, I started mine when I was in my 30s. So when I get to my 60s, for every dollar I'm putting into it, I'm going to be seeing $5 to $8 back, just depending on how it grows and compounds over the years.
Man, so this is where things get real interesting, right? This is where things get really interesting, because this whole infinite banking thing that blows my mind whenever we talk about this portion of it, as far as being able to take out a line of credit on the cash value in that account, right? It blows my mind that you can actually use money, pretty much use your money, and still have your money grow in your account.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm asking this question crazy, but how does that really work?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm going to do my best to take something that's really complex and make it as simple as I can. So these contracts benefit the insurance company just as much as they benefit you. They benefit the insurance company, because insurance companies, when you purchase a whole life policy, they know they're having to guarantee you whatever death benefit you purchased.
Right.
And so they've got the math figured out of when you are statistically going to die. So they know, okay, I need to collect this many dollars from this person by that time that they die, because I can invest it at this given rate and get this kind of return on it between now and then, so that I can pay it out. They've got that math figured out, because they have, nerds that live in a sea of computers in their home office. And so where your cost of insurance can, again, it takes up some of your cash value in those early years of the policy, right? So you're not getting access to 100% of what you put in. Well, during that time, they're able to make money on the money that they're not giving you access to yet. So insurance companies have this beautiful business model where they can use what's called float. And Warren Buffett talks about it all the time. He talks about his favorite business that Berkshire owns is the insurance business, because it's the only business where you can sell the product before you have to deliver it. Because they sell the product, which is the insurance, the death benefit. They collect all of the cash from you up front, and then they eventually pay you out at the end. So while they're collecting all the cash from you, they're able to take and invest that for a return in, high grade bonds, commercial real estate, and some of the other activities they invest in. So it's good for them, but it's good for you too, because as a long-term asset, it is stable and predictable. They've got their math figured out. They know how this thing's going to grow. And they actually, now I'm coming to the heart of the answer to your question, Hutch. They actually contractually guarantee you upside. So it's like you have almost the equivalent of what I would say you have the equivalent of basically a guaranteed bond. That's what it looks like, because it's obviously a very, very conservative growth. You're talking 4 to 5% internal rate of return. So it's like a 4 to 5% savings account, but they're contractually guaranteeing this to you. So it's a super, super stable asset. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So say for instance, I have a cash value of about $300,000 in my accounts, right? And I wanted to use that. What does that situation look like?
So your cash value, quite simply, is the insurance company giving you access to a portion of your death benefit that you have purchased. They're giving you access to use that while you're alive. That's nice. What your cash value is. So I mean, in the simplest way to put it, your cash value is access to your death benefit while you're alive. And so they give you access to more and more the longer that you're in the contract. So going to your example, I've got $300,000 of cash value available. I'm going to leverage that through a policy loan. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't want to take a withdrawal. I don't want to do a surrender, because if I start to surrender it, it becomes taxable. If I take a withdrawal, it becomes taxable. But if I do a loan, it's not taxable. It's considered borrowed money that I'm allegedly going to pay back.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, if I don't, my death benefit is large enough, it covers my debt. So I'm going to take and leverage this through a policy loan. Now, at the same time, the insurance company is going to credit me the full dividend on my policy for that year. So it's like having my savings account making 4 or 5% interest, and I can leverage $300,000 out of my savings account, go purchase a deal, and still get the 4 to 5% interest on the $300,000. So that's what makes it unique, is that with the right kinds of companies, which I should probably side note here for everybody that's listening. The only kinds of companies you can do this with are going to be mutual life insurance companies, not publicly traded stock companies, but mutual privately owned companies, because they pay a dividend to the policy owners, not to stockholders. But with a mutual company that has a feature called non-direct recognition of loan, which means they don't recognize when you have a loan out, they still pay you the full dividend. If you work with a company that has direct recognition of loan, when you take that $300,000 policy loan, they are going to discount your dividend. You don't want that. So you want to work with a company that has non-direct recognition of loan. And there's only a handful of them in the US. So when you do that, when you leverage out the 300 grand, they're going to do the policy loan for you. They're going to give you your full dividend. And when you return the money back to the policy, let's just say you took this loan at age 30. When you get to age 65, let's say the cash value was forecasted at that time to be $800,000. Well, whether you take the money out and you use it 5 times over, 10 times over, 15 times over, or whether you just leave it in there and never touch it, at age 65, you're still going to have the $800,000. So there's no opportunity cost to leverage your money out to do a deal. Now, if you think about that versus if you'd used a savings account or a money market account, when you took the money out, you stopped earning interest on it. So your $800,000 that you would have at age 65, that number gets smaller every time you take the money out and use it. So what we're doing basically is we're able to take the dollar and grow it in the policy, and at the same time we can put it into a real estate deal. We can grow that same dollar in 2 places at the same time. We're building multiple assets at the same time.
Knowledge is key. Actually, the application of knowledge is key. So definitely, if you're listening to this and you have the resources to put some money aside in one of these funds, definitely one of these policies, definitely take the advantage of that. Right. So you mentioned there's a couple of tax advantages and also there's some benefits, right? As far as, talk about the loan being private, right? So it's protected from creditors as well, and protected from being from a divorce, lawsuit, so on and so forth.
So life insurance policies, similar to retirement accounts, come with some built-in asset protections. Now, this doesn't apply the same to all 50 states. Gotcha. It does depend what state you're in, but in most states, including my home state of Kansas, your cash value is protected against lawsuits and creditors. Now, that varies state by state. So that's something that you want to check on, or, if someone's working with me, I can help them research that to find out, okay, just how protected am I? But yes, asset protections are a piece of it. The other thing is there are a couple riders, they call them riders, which are basically add-ons to your life insurance policy that are unique to this asset versus like a savings account or a retirement account. One of them is a disability waiver rider. So if you're disabled and you can't go to work and earn a living, you're probably going to stop contributing to your Roth. You're probably going to stop, putting money away wherever you're putting it away. With a life insurance company, if you put the disability waiver rider on and you become disabled and you can't go to work, the insurance company is going to pick up the tab and start funding your policy for you during the time of your disability. So that's pretty unique. You have an asset class that can fund itself if you're not able to go to work. Another one that I think is key, especially as we start thinking about it in our late 40s, early 50s, a lot of us start realizing that like our health isn't always going to remain top notch. And if there's 2 things that'll put you under in retirement quickly, one is unanticipated taxes and the other is unanticipated healthcare expenses.
Okay.
And so anymore, the mutual companies that I work with, they have what's called accelerated death benefit riders on them, where if you would either have a terminal illness or a chronic illness, which means you can't do 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living, if you would have either of those situations occur, you can begin to use the death benefit, not just your cash value, but above and beyond that. You can begin to use the death benefit tax-free to cover your medical expenses. And what's so is important about that for people to realize is, if you think about what it looks like for most American families, when mom and dad get into their 70s and 80s and start having these health issues, they usually don't have whole life insurance. They had term insurance that expired years ago. And so when a nurse has to start come living at home, all of a sudden the expenses rack up quickly and the family starts selling all of their assets and liquidating all of their wealth. And so everything that they had hoped to build for a legacy, it's no longer going to be available because it's getting, we're draining the tank to pay for medical expenses. Wow. So this becomes the stand-in asset where now we can use the policy for what it was built for, and we can keep the family's real estate holdings, keep the farm, whatever it is. And it just puts families in a better position as far as legacy and wealth is concerned.
Nice.
Awesome strategy. And so I guess just one quick question to clear up before we head on into the focus round. You have your cash value. So say you've been putting in $10,000 a year for the last 5 years. So you've contributed $50K, but you got $1 million policy. When you're saying you can use your cash value or use some of you could take a loan out against your death benefit. Are you accessing sort of the $50K you've put in, or are you, can you take out a $200K loan and 50 of that comes from the money you put in, the other 150 comes from your death benefit, and you buy something, and if you die, now your policy just instead of pays out $1 million, it pays out $850K because you took out $150K. How does each of those pieces work whenever you're talking about the cash value of the policy versus the death benefit and what you actually have access to?
Sure. Yeah. And I hope I didn't cause confusion earlier, so I'll kind of restate it a different way, and hopefully that helps for those that are listening to be clear. So your cash value and your death benefit aren't truly two separate things. Your death benefit is what the policy that you've purchased, you've bought a death benefit. That's what's occurred. With whole life insurance, to sweeten the deal, the insurance company gives you an increasing amount of access to that death benefit as cash for you to use while you're alive. So they're the same thing. It's just that, let's use your example. You've got $1 million death benefit. They're not going to give you access to all $1 million the first couple of years. They're just not going to do it. But let's say you've put in $50,000 a year for 5 years. So that's $250,000. And let's just say they're willing to give you access at that point to 200 of it. Okay. And I don't know, I'm using arbitrary numbers. It could be more, could be less, depending on your situation and how you built your policy. But let's say they'll give you access to 200,000 of that. So that is when you would take a policy loan and deploy that 200,000, you're then going to show a loan outstanding on the policy. And one of two things will happen. Either you will put the $200,000 back, or if you happen to die before you put it back, they're going to take that off the top of your $1 million death benefit and then pay out whatever is remaining. Does that clear that up a little bit? And was there any piece of your question that I didn't answer there?
I think that covered it very well. So
can this policy be owned as an LLC, or does it have to be a individual policy? Because I know we want to talk about that, the family bank, the family office.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something is this something that it's applicable? And how is the ownership?
So absolutely good question. First of all, I cannot think of any advantageous reason to place the policy within an LLC. I can't think of a reason to do that that would be advantageous.
Yep.
Because you're already getting a lot of the benefits that you would get with an LLC by doing business through an LLC. You're already getting those as an individual. The other thing is, as an owner of a policy, you've got to show an insurable interest in the insured person. Now, that can be yourself, that can be your spouse, your children, could be your business partners. So this absolutely, I'm going to take it one step further because you might have been going there anyway, Hutch. This absolutely could be used as a business asset, a business capital account. And many times what that looks like is two business owners who are partners in a business will purchase a policy, one on each other, for a couple of reasons. Number one, if your business partner is really key to your operations and they're not here tomorrow and you're not good at what they were good at, you're going to want a death benefit on that person so that you've got some money to cover the gap while you find and train their replacement, or while you pay back your investors and make everybody whole and wrap up the business. So that's one piece of it. But the second piece is, and we're getting off into another topic, which would be another talk for another day, but most business owners are over-concentrated in their business just by the nature of when you own a business, you almost always reinvest. You reinvest the profits. That's not a bad thing, but what that does is that concentrates your risk. If something goes wrong in the business and the cash flows stop, you're not going to recover the money that you reinvested. So a way to kind of insulate yourself against that risk is with an asset class like this, what if you had a retained earnings strategy where you could pull off a couple $1,000s a month and put it away into this shelter, and if the business would ever go under or things would not go as planned, you still have built this separate, independent, non-correlated asset. And we do that a lot for business owners, especially those who are, multiple owners of the business, and everybody just kind of wants to make sure they can recover a portion of their wealth if something would ever happen or change.
Yeah, because the way I've heard this used before was that, say you have a family office and the family office buys whole life policies on all of the people in the family. And so, and then if you have a business in the family that's generating income that's paying into these whole life policies for all of the family members, then say you could pay for college with one. You could,
True.
If they want to buy a car, you could have them buy a car from the family office, in which the family office would then access the cash value in a policy.
Yeah.
And then if you have a deadbeat in the family who doesn't pay the loan back, that's fine, because at some point they're going to expire, and the whole life pays off the beneficiary, which is the whole life policy. So there's incentive for the family members to pay it back, because you're growing the wealth back, and then you want to take out another loan later. And so I don't know. So I think, as far as when you think of a strategy like that, who owns the policy? I think that was Hutch's questions too. Is it the LLC that owns it, or
Sure.
Is it the main, the trustee of the family office, or?
Sure. Very good question. So I think what you're referring to also is, a lot of people call this the Rockefeller method, where there's a family trust in place. There's a trust in place, and the trust is the beneficiary of everybody's
That's
policy.
it. Okay.
And when people die, the death benefit refills the family trust. And what's nice about that is a trust has control, and the rules are written out to where, what you were mentioning, Heath, if somebody's not going to be a good steward, the trust can decide not to distribute to somebody. So I think that's what you were getting at. To answer the question directly, though, an owner of a life insurance policy could be an LLC. What we would want to do is really sit down with somebody and look at their specific situation and find out what they want to accomplish, because there can be advantages and disadvantages when you look at changing the ownership of a policy from an individual to an entity like an LLC or like a trust. Usually, the usual case is an individual will own it. An individual is the insured party, and then maybe an entity is the beneficiary. That's usually what it looks like. And there's a number of different reasons for that, which are beyond the scope of probably.
Yeah. We'll have to bring you on to maybe just talk
meet up
about this
Q&A.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea too, actually. The Rockefeller method.
So I know we got short time. He'd got to go before we dive into the focus round. But I really wanted us to talk briefly about when you reach the retirement age and you wanted to withdraw from this from the cash value, right? How does that work? You can do annuity, loans. What is the preferred course of action for withdrawing after retirement age?
Yep. You'll do it in the form of policy loans, and you can set that up if you want to be a pension style income where you've got, say, $50,000 a year coming in tax free. More than likely, for the real estate investors out there, you're looking at taking selectively from this account tax-free income when you want it and when you need it during different years of your retirement. So maybe age 71 to 73, you don't really have a need for it or a want for it. You've got plenty of other cash flow. But age 74 and 75, for some reason, you decide you'd like to pull from this asset. For those who have a traditional market portfolio, in a year like this year, where back in March, the market took a big hit, you don't want to pull out of your market accounts like that if you're in retirement. So you leave that alone, you come over to this bucket and take from your policy. So, I mean, there's a number of different ways you could do it, Hutch, but generally, I think most people just enjoy having it as a tax-free bucket that they can take income when they want for whatever reason they want, strategically from year to year. So some years you may take a little, some a lot, some none. And that's what's nice about it, is it's flexible. Unlike your retirement accounts that come with required minimum distributions where the IRS tells you what you have to take out, you can do whatever you want. And that's what's nice about it.
Oh man, great stuff. Really appreciate the information you're dropping on us today, Adam.
Yeah.
Heath, I think we got to dive into the focus round.
Let's do it.
Yes, sir. So, I know you're prepped for the focus round. What do you do for fun, Adam?
I like to fish, and specifically fly fishing for trout.
Nice.
Tight.
Yeah, I got to go steelhead fishing with a buddy of mine up in, and that was a unique experience, I have to say. But I grew up fishing on a boat, so it's a lot different. We had to hike up a mountain in waders and everything. It was nuts, but that's awesome. Yeah, nothing's more relaxing than fishing, right?
I love it.
All right. O is for opportunity. What is one opportunity that was a game changer for you?
It was the current deal that I'm in. My network led to me finding out about a 52-unit deal in Kansas City last year, and I was able to invest in that opportunity, and I'm glad I did, and I wish I wouldn't have waited so long to get into multifamily.
What is your preferred, what is communication? What is your best communication tip?
As it applies to multifamily investing and being a syndicator or participating in syndications, I would really lean towards over-communicating. If you feel like you're sending out too many emails or calling to check in too much as a general partner, you're probably not. Always lean towards over-communication. Your limited partners will tell you if they want less calls or less emails, but I would say in any business, most people tend to under-communicate, so lean towards over-communication. You can't hurt by being transparent and letting people know where things are and what's going on.
Nice.
Absolutely. The limited partners are just sitting there worrying sometimes, waiting for the phone to ring. And the general partners are just like, everything's fine. We don't have to call them. That's not the way to go. All right. U is for understanding. What is one thing you wish you understood earlier?
I wish I truly understood the scalability of multifamily and how it can speed up the wealth building process. I think I knew it in my head, sort of, but like you don't really wrap your head around the math until you live through like what I'm living through right now. And I'll just give you a quick example. I invested in a single family deal. I had about 50,000 in that deal. And over the course of owning that thing for 5 years, the net rents we got from that, like the money we took home from the rents and what we netted after the sale, I might have got an 85% return on my money in 5 years. And then I think about $50,000 in the deal that I'm in right now in Kansas City with this 52 unit. And you can literally, just by improving and raising rents and increasing efficiencies, you can force so much appreciation that in a year's time, you can create a situation where you can double your money. Like right now, if we would cash out or if we would refinance, sell, I would get more than my initial investment back. Like I would be able to get back 100% return or better. So just that scalability, it took with 5 years with a single family investment, I made maybe 85%. And in 1 year on this multifamily investment, or 14 months now, I'm at the same level of return if you look at our equity that we've built just by forcing appreciation through improved cash flow.
And another point is, during that 5 years that you held that single family rental, you're the one making the decisions about the toilets, the tenants. You're the one checking on the property manager or self-managing it yourself.
Side, yep.
So all the time you spent with all the repairs and all the phone calls and all the headaches that come with it, you're still not getting the return that you get in a syndication where you're leveraging the expertise of a sponsor or a team who has been doing this for a while. Yeah. So that's leverage is such a powerful thing in real estate, and leveraging your time and other people's experience is something that comes later. You're like, I can leverage other people's money. But once you start to leverage other people's time and experience and everybody creates a win-win situation, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, man.
I spoke to scalability of money, Heath, and I missed the mark in that I didn't even mention time. And what you just said about time is huge. You're exactly right. It was really time intensive when I was in the single family game. It has not been time intensive, and I'm very happy to be an LP because of how much easier my life is right now. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
Awesome.
All right, Adam, to what do you attribute your success?
Well, that's a mix of things, but I would say the foundation is my faith. And in the Bible, in Deuteronomy 8, it says, "But remember the Lord your God, for it's He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." And so I'm thankful and have gratitude every day for that ability that God gave me life. He put me here, and I have a brain that works well enough that I can do creative things with it. So that's the foundation. But then also, I mean, I don't think it's good enough just to be here. I think you actually have to put effort into whatever it is that your purpose is. And so I would just say consistency, having a vision and really striving towards that vision day in and day out. And then relationships, quality relationships with people who have brought opportunities my way. So I think it's a combination of all those things that have contributed to the successes I've been able to enjoy thus far.
Man, that's amazing.
Incredible.
I think growing up for me, a term that I often hear is that it's easier for a camel to enter through the needle of to the eye of a needle, or whatever the case was, than a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. And I think that is so widely misunderstood, right? Because especially when you have a good foundation, right? The Bible actually speaks so much about creating wealth, right? And it's good that you have that spiritual foundation, you know, because wealth building is consistent with having a good spiritual foundation, I believe.
Absolutely. And I think wealth doesn't just encompass money. I think we spend a lot of time, and we need to spend a lot of time, talking about money and material wealth, because our culture and our society as a whole doesn't really understand how to do wealth. But wealth is more than that too. It's your health, it's your mental well-being, and just being a good steward of all of those things. And I think the money, looking at it from a money perspective, is easiest because money is tangible. It actually can come into our hands and leave our hands. And so it just is a really good training tool for stewardship. But stewardship encompasses not just obviously your money, but your time, your health, your relationships, all those things.
Yeah, and warehouse.
I like how what you attribute to your success. You know, that's like a blueprint our audience can use. You know, it's just like boils down to faith, vision, action, and relationships. And
that's good.
If you can, if you have your vision, where you want to go, and you have the faith that you'll get there, and you take the action to meet the people that you need to meet, then miracles can happen. So.
Absolutely.
And the cool thing about miracle is that we all have a responsibility to the miracle process. We have to play a part. We have to play a part in the miracle process. Yes,
I like
sir.
that. That's great, Hutch.
All right. Well, guys, this has been an incredible episode. There has been a lot of golden nuggets here too. Not only are you building an additional asset class, you're building an additional asset class that you can still go buy your favorite asset. For me, it's multifamily real estate. And so Adam, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this knowledge and wisdom with our audience. If our audience wanted to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yep. I will give out my email for folks, and then I'm going to say the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. And I think I'm the only Adam Doran on there that's in the contiguous 48 US states. But if not, my profile picture it's pretty easy to distinguish if you see me here on the screen today, or if not, I'm the Adam Doran in Kansas City on LinkedIn. I mean, I think there's only one of me. But my email is adoran@prevailiws.com. And you're welcome to send an email with questions or get more details or set up a conversation.
Excellent.
Nice.
All right. Well, Hutch, great stuff, man. I'm so excited.
Talking about a paradigm shift, man. Warehouse money, right? And lines of credit, and using money it's good stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and close this out. I'm Dr. Heath Jones.
And I'm Hutch, the Marine Investor. Out.